It's just Wayne that we're looking for.
Wayne's here. I can see him. He's muted. He's just looking for, I think, something to put his hand up with.
Sure, great working.
No, I've been here for a while.
Yeah, he's echoing.
Yeah. Got some awesome feedback happening there. Were you able to use your computer or your iPad, Deputy Mayor?
I got it sent to my iPad just
Okay.
because, I mean, to my computer. Otherwise, I have way too much background noise and I can't hear you guys. So I like it here so I can cover the background noise and hear you guys.
Yeah, I couldn't get my computer to work. It wasn't the right Chrome or something.
Oh, there's always some.
Mr. Mayor, we're Facebook Live. It's 6 o'clock.
It's 6 o'clock. We call this meeting to order. Would someone from council be willing to and able to read the acknowledgement?
I'll read it.
Thank you, Councillor Pat.
Okay. We acknowledge that we are in Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting ground, gathering place, and traveling route to 350 Blackfoot Main.
Oh, Pat, you're still muted.
Yeah, we're not hearing all of it. It stopped after Métis.
Okay.
There we go.
So again, we acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, and traveling to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pat. So we'll call this meeting to order. Is there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda? And thanks to everyone for putting up with this COVID-19 business. So is there any changes or additions or deletions?
Nothing from administration, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Anything from council? Anything requested for change? Nope.
One thing for request.
Please speak up, Councillor George.
I have one thing for request. Discussion on the time for meetings.
Oh, there you go. What was that about meetings? Sorry.
I was just wondering if everybody's happy with the present time for meetings. It was changed from 7 to 6 by my request. I at present don't need that request.
Mm-hmm. So would you like to add an agenda item to talk about the meeting minutes or meeting times, and maybe we'll make that 8.9? Does that sound okay, Pat?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that would work.
Okay, so we'll add meeting times to the agenda for 8.9, and we can discuss the meeting time. Great, thank you. So with the amended agenda, would someone be willing to make the motion to accept the agenda as presented?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
I make a motion that we accept the agenda as presented with the additions.
Thank you very much. So this evening, we're fortunate we have a delegation. Phil Dirks is going to come and wow us with the audited financial statements. Is Phil present with us?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Awesome. Yep, you're not going to put us to sleep, are you?
I certainly hope not. I'm just going to share my screen here.
Thanks for coming. We appreciate you and all that you do for our town.
Can you just let me know if you can see my screen? Is there a auditor's presentation on the screen?
I see a highlighter tool properties.
That's no good. How about now?
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Okay, auditor's presentation.
So Phil, as we're going through this, would you like questions at the end, or does it matter? Or?
No, I would think if you have a question, you may as well just bring it up when we're talking and we can see what we can do, but hopefully I'll answer most of your questions. But
okay, so if anyone from council has a question, just throw it out that I've got a question, and then we can stop and you can ask your question, okay?
Sounds good. And if I'm not loud enough, just let me know.
Go ahead, Phil.
So good evening, and I'll try to give you an overview of the financial statements and auditors audit work for the 2019 fiscal year. And actually, these Zoom meetings are working pretty good for me. I think I might actually be able to use my screen here almost better than in person. So hopefully it's going to work out. It took me a while to figure out that no, not everybody on a Zoom meeting is in San Francisco. I see the mayor. Like, why is everybody in Zoom meeting in San Francisco? It's like, I'm stuck here in Alberta. So anyways, just a word about our auditor's report before we get into the financial results. So I'll just call it up here. So I'll just mention that our auditor's report, the first part here is the opinion paragraph, indicates that the town's financial statements are in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So it's a clean opinion. That's probably the most important part of the whole report. Beyond that, the report goes on to talk about mostly what an audit is and what we are doing or what the auditors do in completing their work. So I'll probably just leave it at that. We did send you an audit plan earlier in the year so that you could be aware of what we're doing and so on. But again, clean audit report. Audit went very well, thanks to Sharon and everybody else there that helped out and getting what we needed. So we'll go right into the numbers here. So just at the top of the page, there was just over $1.2 million of cash in the bank at the end of the year. That was in a mush account, and we've confirmed that balance with the financial institution. There's no issues there. Really hasn't changed much from last year. Receivables are always a key area in any audit. So we'll take a look at those in a little more detail here. So there's the $667,000 that the town has on its books for receivables. I just have to, sorry, there we go. I'm good now. I have my notes on the other screen, so. Okay, so pretty standard things for a municipality. You can see there's $365,000 of tax balances. Other governments, most of this 180,000 here is MSI money. There's utilities outstanding, a little bit higher than last year, but not significantly. And then there's an allowance for a couple of slow paying tax accounts where it's thought that the town may not recover those amounts. So that was about 24,000. So again, total receivables were 666. You are aware, I believe, there's a fairly large receivable included in that, in the taxes balance. So hopefully the plan will be that that will come to fruition as time goes on here. But other than that, we didn't have any concerns with any of the receivables. So just rounding out financial assets here, there was $1,925,000 financial assets. So those are items that are either cash or will be cash in the near future.
So Phil, could
Yep.
I ask a question?
Sure.
I noticed land held for resale is the exact same number as 2018.
Yeah.
Refresh my memory what that means again.
Well, there's a couple of parcels of land that have been on the books for a number of years. I'd have to look in the file to get the details, but they were on the books before we were the auditors. So I'm not sure. I mean, I think they've been on the books for quite a few years. But I'd have to go back into the file to get you the details on exactly which properties they are. So
Yeah, no, not so much interested in which properties. I want to understand what it means held for resale.
yeah, there were maybe Patty. I don't know if you have any insight on that.
Sharon, I think we have some details about that, but I could share that with council. It's Sharon, did you want to step on that question?
Well, I don't know if Sharon's there, but anyway, at one point, those were some properties that were for sale. And I guess the distinction would be, are they still for sale or not? Anything's for sale at the right price, I guess. So these are just carried forward since a number of years. But if you need more information, Sharon or Patty.
Yeah, maybe we could just get some background on that. And not everything's for sale, not our auditor, that's for sure.
No, I'm not. That's right.
Mr. Mayor, I'll get that information to council, but it is land that's sitting in an account, but I'll get the specifics. I know that we submitted land for auction this year, and because of COVID-19, land was not available to go to auction in 2019 by the
Right,
Alberta
but it's-
government, right?
Yeah, but it said the same number for 2018, so I was just curious.
Yeah, I'll get details on all the accounts in that line item.
Thank you.
Councillor, Mayor Carl, could I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
So where does that land that we acquired across from the Esso and Shell, that big land, where does that go into that picture? It's not really for land for resale, so where would it be in the big picture?
Would that be a tangible capital asset?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
I think you're referring to the land that was purchased last year, right? 2018?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it was like 100 and some thousand, if memory serves me correct. Yeah, it would be
Yeah.
capital assets. There's a land category. The only
Okay.
distinction with this land is it must have been for sale at one time. So that's how it got there.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
no problem. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, okay, good question. So looking at items that the town owes, liabilities, there's various payables, 223,000, nothing unusual, accrued payroll, accrued interest on the debt, various trade payables, those kind of things. So our main concern there is to look for completeness of the payables, make sure they got all got recorded in the correct year. So that's primarily our primary focus in that area.
Sorry, a question for you. What are deposit liabilities? What is that?
Yeah, I was just gonna get to that.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And that's a good question. I'm gonna have to refresh my memory here. Just a second. I think there was I don't know, here we go. Oh yes, Canadian, most of that's from the Canadian Rocky Hemp Corp deposit that they had to give the town a security deposit. So that was $35,000. So that's why that's higher than last year. So that's most of that number. Beyond that, there would be some ice rental deposits and facility deposits. So yeah, that's what the deposits are, but that's mainly the reason for the increase.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's a liability because you'd have to pay it back when they meet the conditions and so on. Okay, so moving on, deferred revenue. There's $781,000 of deferred revenue. Most of that is MSI capital money. A good portion of that. Maybe I'll just call up the financial statements briefly here and take a look at the note. But here you can see, again, that most of that number, 585,000 here is MSI money. Then there's also some donations for primarily the community park. So these deferred revenue, again, is just money that the town has received, but it hasn't spent on the stipulation or the expenses that it was received for. So, you know, when you get the MSI money and until you name a project, it would be included in deferred revenue. Once you've got a project and you spend the money, it comes out of deferred revenue and goes to revenue account. So the reason it's a liability is if you didn't use the money for what it was intended for at a given point in time and the world ended, you'd have to give it back, right? So that's why it's reported as a liability. The only other liability on the town's books is the long-term debt. So that was $1.4 million. That's with the Alberta Capital Financing Authority. And we've confirmed that balance directly with the AFCA. That debt is anywhere from, well, 3 to 4%, the interest rates. And right now, at the current rate, most of the debt would get retired in 2037 and 2051. So just look at the debt limits here. The town is required by the Municipal Government Act to include the debt limits in the town's financial statements. So this debt limit here, the total amount is operating revenue times 1.5. And then we take the debt off, and you're left with the debt limit of 2.9 million. So that's what's available to be, you could borrow that without getting ministerial approval. So you're well within your debt limits. If you look at the next page here, you'll see that this is a graph that Municipal Affairs put together. So this just compares Bruderheim with numerous other communities, which I'll show you at the end included, but this just looks at debt, the amount of debt limit that's been used. So Bruderheim here is the gold line. So at the end of 2018, the town had used 36% of its debt limit. At the end of 2019, you're down to 33. So you're going down again. The blue line here is the average. So you can see you're a little bit higher as far as what you've used for debt limit, but not significantly. Well, you know, average is 18.3 and Bruderheim was at 36. So that just gives you a little bit of idea how you compare to other communities.
But that gray range, Phil, is where the high and low watermark is.
Yes,
But
the blue shaded area is the range, yes. So you're pretty much right in the middle there. And again, on a per capita basis, you're a little bit higher than the average, but again, you're lower than the middle. But you know, if you do the math on that, average is 632, Bruderheim's 1075. So what does that mean in total dollars? If you times that difference by your population of about 1,400, you know, that's almost $600,000 more. And you can see back here, this is when you took out the loan for the street improvement. That was $1 million loan that came out for the street improvements that year.
Yep.
All right, so that wraps up liabilities. Total liabilities were 2.5 million. So if we take the net financial assets and subtract all the liabilities, including the long-term debt, which we all know doesn't have to be paid tomorrow, you end up with net financial assets or debt. So the net debt is 567,000. So that just means that that's going to be required to be raised from future revenue sources. But, you know, again, this debt is not all due tomorrow. But again, that is the way this is reported. So that's how that works. You've improved there by about, you know, $70,000, $60,000. Moving on to non-financial assets. So capital assets is the biggest asset on any municipality's books. So we'll take a look at that in a little more detail here. I apologize, there's a lot of numbers on the screen. It's an accountant gone crazy. But the important part here is if you look under this column, purchases, those are the items that were purchased last year, the bigger additions, the skate park, and then various other pieces of equipment and so on those were the additions last year. So our main concern in that area is usually, you know, invariably sometimes clients will record things as assets that aren't assets, don't meet the definition of an asset. So that's really what we're looking for. And then you can see over on the far side here, so there was $603,000 of purchases, and this is how they got paid for. So you can just see there where the money was coming from. There was a couple of spots where reserves were used, but most of it was grants, donations, and so on. So just thought it would be interesting to see how those were paid for. You might know that, but that's how they were covered. So just rounding out the statement of financial position then. So now if we take the net financial or the net debt and the non-financial assets, that is the total of those two numbers is the accumulated surplus. So that was 11.5 million. And we'll take a look at that on the next slide here. What makes up the 11.5 million? So that's the number we were looking at. Whoops, sorry. So most of that equity or net worth tied up in capital assets. So that's the net book value of the assets less the debt. Just like your house mortgage, you have equity in your house. Town has equity in these assets here. Obviously, you can't spend that, but that's where most of the equity is. And then beyond that, the town has restricted surplus of, so reserves of 957,000 and a small deficit there of 72,000. So total liquid surplus, that I like to call it, is 885,000 compared to 890 last year. So you're very similar position to where you were last year. This graph, again, provided by Municipal Affairs. I'll just explain how this works here. So this is taking unrestricted equity and the reserves and looking at them on a per capita basis. So again, Bruderheim's the gold bar, and average for those communities is the darker blue bar. But again, if you look at total per capita, other communities 978 plus 298, about 1275. And Bruderheim was 754 less 115, so about 650. So you're a little bit less than the average there as far as liquid equity. So that wraps up the statement of financial position. Maybe I'll just stop there and see if there's any questions. So if there's no questions on that, I'll just move on to the statement of operations. So again, this is operating revenue. Town had $2.8 million of operating revenue last year. Budget was 2.8, well, just over 2.8. So there was about an $80,000 uptick to the budget in revenues. Just a couple of comments on some of the yellow items there. Variances from budget. See in rentals, that was a little bit under budget, primarily due to the campground. Was not quite as good as anticipated. Government transfers for operating. The town has recorded grant for the LC Ready grant, and that's not budgeted because there's an offsetting expenditure. So that's why there's this difference here. Penalties is basically budgeted as per last year. Taxes were a little slower than anticipated, so that came in a bit higher than budget. And then under licenses and permits, there was a $20,000 subdivision fee that wasn't in the budget, so that was an upswing there. And interest, that one looks a little bit odd. Just to back up here, I neglected to mention when we were looking at the balance sheet, the town had a bond. You had a bond that was outstanding, so that was this number. Whoops. That 39,000 was outstanding, and that bond matured in the last year. And the way that was accounted for ended up reducing the interest last year. So that's why this number here is lower than budget. It was about $9,300. So it didn't affect your cash. It was just an accounting entry. But again, like I said, total budgeted revenue was actually about $80,000 less than actual. Again, another graph by the province here shows property taxes per capita. So you can see Bruderheim again, gold line, very similar to your counterparts as far as where you're getting, what you're getting for how much you're taxing your residents on a per capita basis. And then again, looking at sales and user charges, which is mostly water, sewer, garbage per capita basis. Looking at that, I think it would be hard to complain that, people are getting charged much different than other places. And you can see here too, you're on the lower end of the spectrum there. So actually, just on that topic, I was just gonna maybe show you in the financial statements too, just the utilities department. So environmental services here brought in $906,000 last year. Expenses before amortization were $668. Amortization was another 36. So you actually had a profit there. Those utilities were self-paying last year, $201,000. And the year before, again, was $114,000. So you are covering costs in the last couple of years. But you know how that can go if there's ever a major water break or something like that, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
so anyway, that looks pretty good. So that's revenue. If we take a look at expenses,
Bill, do you mind if I ask a question about revenue? If you...
yeah, go ahead.
So as many communities do, folks that may have difficulty paying their taxes on time, they can approach the town office and work out a path forward for them. Does that impact us at all when it comes to these revenue results?
Well, the only place that would impact, and I guess you're talking about taxes and utilities, right?
Well, mainly just taxes,
Oh,
but
just taxes?
I guess it's both, but
Yeah, I mean, I guess with the taxes, it wouldn't impact your revenue per se. So I'll get my tax bill, the town will record it the same way they always have. Depending on my financial situation, you know, I may be, when you give me a break for 3 months and who knows where this thing goes, right? I mean, you may have some collection issues down the road. You still have the option to take over a person's property, right? So I can't see it being a big impact, other than there may be a little bit more maintenance required and getting people caught up once this all clears up, right? So hopefully there won't be a lot of people that don't pay, but it may be slower, right? But your revenue will still be recorded. It's just whether or not there's going to be an allowance for a potential bad debt included in there.
okay. Thank
So
you.
we're seeing that with a lot of clients, not just municipalities, right? You know, gas co-ops, for instance, and rural electrification companies, they have to now give customers a break, and yet they have to keep paying for the power and the gas, right? So causing a little bit of a kerfuffle, but we'll see how, hopefully it sounds like maybe we're turning the corner here. So that's good news. Does that
Thanks,
answer
Phil.
your question?
Yes, sir.
So looking at expenses, total expenses last year were 3.2 million. Budget was 2.7. You'll remember that there's no budget for amortization here. So if you took that number out, this total actual number would be 2,749,000 compared to 2,730. So you're only over by about 20. Some of that was up here in Parks and Rec. Power budget was a little bit light there. In land use development and planning, I mentioned there was a grant recorded for LC ready expenses, and this is where there's some expenses recorded that weren't in the budget as well. And then you did have a nice year for wastewater treatment and disposal. The budget variance there is primarily due to repairs and maintenance budget not being needed. So knock on wood, there wasn't too many troubles last year. But if you look at the rest of these expense categories, you know, there's not a lot of difference between actual and budget. So that's a good news. And again, the main thing to take away here from the very bottom is you have to adjust for amortization here to get back to some kind of comparable comparison there.
Correct.
And I'll just take a look at that again on the next, in a couple of slides here. If you look at one more slide here for comparisons, total per capita expenditures in 2018, or just about 2,338,000. Average was 222. So last year you were a little bit higher than others as far as expending, but you know, very comparable. And last year, actually, if you look at total expenses, it's not much different than this year, right? So in fact, you're down a little bit this year. So more or less, I think the results would be similar this year. So I don't think anybody can accuse you that you're spending way more than anybody else that's in these slides. Just rounding out the statement of operations then. So if we backed up a couple slides, took total revenue less total expenses, we'd end up with this first line here. So that is your annual operating deficit. So if strictly speaking, revenues less expenses, including amortization, there was a deficit of 318,000. And I'll come back to that in a second here. Other revenue, last year, like I mentioned, the town had various grants for capital purposes. So that's what this 114,000 is here. You also had some donations that you were saving up for, primarily the community park. So those costs were expended like we looked at on the capital asset listing, and the revenue came in here. So most of that is donations that were held and being used now for community park. And then there was also a couple of grants from community groups where they applied for the grant, did the work, and it was your asset. So that's really contributed asset here. There's 202,000. The biggest one was the CFEP. Sorry, I think it was a CFEP grant. I'm just gonna get my bearings here. Community, yeah, for the community park. It was a community facility enhancement program grant that was included in there. So all this other revenue added up to 513,000. And it's all related to capital asset purchases. And unfortunately, capital asset purchases don't go in expenses on this statement. So this gets added to your annual surplus. So these two numbers here equal the annual surplus from an accounting standpoint. But I would caution that that's probably not the most important number on the statements. In fact, maybe the most important number isn't even on the statements. So just backing up there, this part at the bottom is not on the financial statements. So again, if you take the annual operating surplus deficit, start with that number, adjust for amortization there. Your actual comparison there would be budget was 76,000, annual surplus adjusted was 140. So, 140 minus 76, $64,000. And again, most of that was due to a few extra revenue sources that you weren't necessarily planning on at the beginning of the year. So overall, those are pretty good results. If you look at last year, you actually had a small deficit. So this is definitely preferable as far as that goes. As far as the rest of the financial statements go, there was only one other thing I think I was going to point out here. I think we've talked about most of the notes and so on. This COVID, and there's a COVID note here. This note, I'm not sure, actually, I think the copy you might have, we kept having the meetings postponed. I think maybe the copy you had might not have had this note in here, but in the meantime, we felt that was needed to be added. So it's just a note that says, hey, look, there's this COVID problem and it may have impact on the town. There may be a financial effect on the town, but we can't make an estimate of what that would be at the time. Again, I think the only places where you could have an issue is with receivables, people possibly not paying. Other clients, they may have, as an example, some clients have investments in some equities, so they're seeing their market value of those equities really getting hammered, right? So, but luckily you're not in that situation. So that's it for the financial statements, and in summary, really you have a little bit higher debt and lower reserves than some of your counterparts. So maybe this is a good time to just look at who they were comparing you to.
That's what the group population chart is for?
Yeah, so these are the communities that those graphs are based on. So Bruderheim, pretty much in the middle of the population spectrum. And then this is by assessment. So you are on the higher end of the assessment range, but there's only a few that are quite a bit lower. So anyway, these graphs are not perfect in any way. They're more just to give you a little bit of perspective, but I wouldn't necessarily get too carried away with them, but at least it gives you some kind of idea where you're at. So when you look at those other communities, again, here, you a little bit more debt, a little less reserves, but your taxes and sales and user charges and spending, those items are all very comparable. So maybe I'll just stop there and see if anybody has any questions about the financial statements. So just to round things out then, there's also, you would have received a audit findings report that's addressed to council. So I don't think I'll call it up on the screen, but just to summarize, we didn't find any significant control deficiencies. There's no unusual accounting policies, estimates. I think the only estimate really of any significance is amortization. You know, the useful lives of your assets are best estimates. There were no significant uncorrected misstatements. As I mentioned, that bond, the way the bond was accounted for, that was actually, from an accounting standpoint, there was about a $9,000 misstatement. That's why the interest was lower, but that went back to when that was first put on the books. And again, that's not anywhere near significant enough to cause any problems. And then we didn't have any difficulties during the audit. So again, thank you to Sharon and all the other staff for all their help and answering questions and getting information and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, I think overall it was a good year and the audit went very well. So that will conclude what I have to say unless somebody has questions.
Is there any questions from council? Okay, haven't heard none. Thank you very much, Bill. We sure appreciate your time, and hopefully you can stay virus free.
Yes, yeah, actually, I was at a meeting this morning for the first time in, oh, I'd say a month and a half at least. It was in person. So maybe there's hope for, maybe there's hope here yet. So hopefully things will turn around. But yeah, thanks for having me. And I hope if you have any other questions that you think of later or you need some explanation, don't be afraid to let me know. So have a good night.
Yeah, thanks. I bet you like to commute this time around, eh?
Yeah, and it's funny, you know, actually, even just going home, it sounds very selfish. Like there's a lot less traffic recently. It's starting to pick up now again, but definitely noticed there's nobody on the roads, so less anger. I'm not angry. So, anyway, okay, have a good night.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So moving on the agenda, we have a Public Works proclamation to read out. It is the Rhythm of Public Works, National Public Works Week, coming up May 17th to 23rd, the Rhythm of Public Works. Whereas public work professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the town of Bruderheim. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the town of Bruderheim to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2020 marks the 60th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association / Canadian Public Works Association, be it now resolved, I, Carl Huck, Mayor for the town of Bruderheim, hereby designate the week May 17th to 23rd, 2020 as National Public Works Week. I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association, Canadian Public Works Association, and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. So I'll date that and sign that and get back to administration. And I was just thinking as I was reading that, do we need a motion to accept the audited financial statements, CAO Pat, or do we do that when we make the motion later on?
Mr. Mayor, if we could get a motion to accept the presentation, and later on in the agenda, we will do a motion to accept financial statements.
Great, thank you. So looking for a motion from council.
I'll make that motion.
Sorry, we're motioning what exactly?
I'll make the motion that we accept the audit presentation.
Thank you, Councillor George. Any comments, questions, or concerns from council with that motion? Okay, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 And opposed? None, so the motion is carried. Thank you. So moving right along, there's an Emergency Preparedness Week proclamation as well. The Town of Bruderheim Emergency Preparedness Week proclamation. Whereas the Town of Bruderheim recognizes the importance of emergency management in Alberta, and whereas the goal of Emergency Preparedness Week is to raise community awareness and the need to prepare for the possibility of an emergency, and whereas the safety of our community is a responsibility of each and every one of us, and we must prepare now and learn how to secure a strong and healthy tomorrow. Therefore, I, Carl Hope, Mayor, do hereby proclaim the week of May 3rd to May 9th, 2020 to be Emergency Preparedness Week in the town of Bruderheim, and encourage all citizens to participate in educational activities on emergency preparedness. So I'll sign and date that and get that back to administration. Thank you for listening. So now we're on to 6.1. I need a motion to adopt the minutes of the April 15th meeting.
I'll put that in.
Thank you, Councillor Pat.
I move that we adopt the minutes of the April 15th, 2020 regular meeting of council.
Great, thank you. Any comments, questions, or concerns from council with that motion? Okay, I haven't heard none. Call for a vote then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And 6.2, we need to motion to adopt the minutes of the April 29th meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor George.
I make a motion, we adopt the minutes of April 29th, 2020 special meeting of council
Great, thank you
as
so much.
presented.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, or concerns from council with that motion? Okay, haven't heard none. We'll call for a vote. We'll just signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Nope, the motion's carried. Thank you. Number 7, council priorities, information requests. We can start with Councillor Pat.
Information request. I just wanted to share with the councillors that the Friends of Bruderheim School Society are doing it's not a bottle drive, but if you were taking in bottles this month to the bottle depot and you wish to donate to the Friends of Bruderheim for the playground at the school, there's an agreement and you just hand the money over to them. So it's not a bottle drive because we didn't want to put anybody in any harm's way. So that was what transpired. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Pat. Moving right along, we'll go to Deputy Mayor Judy.
I have a couple questions. Permits for buildings, fences, anything like that that people want to do. Are we still doing that?
Mr. Mayor, through Councillor Schiller, absolutely we are.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. I think that was my only question. Thanks.
Thank you. So next up, Councillor Len.
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Councillor Dan.
Nothing for me at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Wayne. Have we lost Councillor Wayne?
He looks frozen. Oh, there he is.
Councillor Wayne, do you have any information requests?
Yes.
While we're waiting for Wayne, just,
Oh,
okay,
there we
there's,
go.
Just a couple of questions that are actually has been brought up. Is it possible to on the walkway we have posts everywhere? Is it possible to put containers of doggy bags in there? Can you hear me? Hello?
Perhaps he could type his questions in the chat screen below.
yeah, for some reason, Wayne, that you're,
Can you hear me?
now we can, yeah. Try again.
I do. Hello? Can you
Go
hear me
ahead.
now?
Yeah,
Can you
Go
hear
ahead.
me?
yeah, go ahead, Councillor Wayne. Maybe while we're waiting to sort out the issues with Councillor Wayne's feed, Councillor George, did you have any information about?
Negative.
Okay, Councillor Wayne, are you there?
Mr. Mayor, I caught some of it. I believe he was asking about doggy bags
Can you
on the
hear
trails.
me now? Can you hear me?
Sort of, yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
If we're not mistaken, you were asking about doggy bags for the walking trails, is that correct?
I'm trying, but it's not working. I'm gonna try logging in different.
Oh, he's got it.
Maybe those,
Oh, there we go. Wait a minute.
maybe those issues, you could phone Patty and ask her about them.
Would that be acceptable, Councillor Wayne?
Wayne, your iPad's better. Do you want to give it another try? I'm going to delete your other one.
So maybe while Wayne is working on getting his computer going, we'll ask about program requests. Would that be okay? Councillor Pat, did you have any program requests?
Not this time, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor,
Not at this time, thanks.
Councillor George,
Not at this time, thanks.
Councillor Len,
Not at this time.
Councillor Dan,
Nope, not at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Wayne, are you there?
Looks like he's connecting to audio.
Okay. We'll give it a sec. Maybe while Wayne's connecting, it might be a good opportunity to mention to folks that the family that was taken out of their home because of the fire, someone has started a GoFundMe page for them to help them out, and that might be something very worthwhile to think about helping out with. Is Wayne available now?
Mr. Mayor, it still says he's connecting.
Okay.
There. Wayne, can you hear us?
So I guess he has poor internet connections down there is what I'm thinking.
I'm thinking that might be a problem. Exactly.
Maybe too much water?
So in lieu of having Wayne being able to speak, we can come back to him when we get the opportunity. What do you think? Or should we just take a comfort break for a couple of minutes? Or
I think we should continue on. We got a big agenda. Hello?
okay.
Ah, there he is.
Is that better?
Yep.
All right, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there, but
No worries.
let me just. All right, sorry, can I ask my questions or my?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I didn't, if there was a response, I didn't hear it, but walking trails seem to be littered with doggy droppings. I'm just wondering if we can kind of help some people out by providing bags on the little boxes, and you get the bags, refillable bags at, I don't know, the dollar store for cheap, and just put them throughout the walking trails. Is that a possibility to look into?
It'd be a mess.
Why is that?
Mr. Mayor,
If I could ask that I talk to the Director of Public Works and get back to council with that answer.
Thank you. And has there been any talk or looking into some kind of drainage or culvert on the east end of the walking path so the water goes underneath instead of over top the walking trail? Because it goes over there for quite some time. Pretty slippery and just again, a safety concern.
Mr. Mayor, I'll get back to council on that one as well.
That's all I got.
Just a question on that one. Virginia and I went for a walk around there, and we were saying even if they made a specific dip in the trail, you know, like that's 6 inches wide, that made the water run there, then it wouldn't be all over, and they would be able to step over it too as an alternate.
Yeah,
Just a thought.
It gets pretty slippery over there and slimy. So
Definitely
that
believe
can
that
be
there's
done.
some, yeah, exactly. Something could be done there. Thank you, Wayne. Anything else? Okay, and we also looked at program requests. Did you have any program requests?
No, I don't. No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we can move on to requests for decisions, 8.1, 2019 audited financial statements. The administration want to do a preamble for that?
Oh, Mr. Mayor, sorry. We don't have a preamble. We're just asking council to accept those financial statements that were presented to you this evening.
Thank you. So we're looking for a motion from council to accept the 2019 audited financial statements as presented by Phil today.
I can make that motion, Mayor
Thank you, Deputy
Carl.
Mayor.
I make a motion the town council accept the 2019 audited financial statements as presented by Phil Dirk, CPA, CA partner, Metrics Group, as presented for the year ended December 31st, 2019.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, or concerns from council with that motion? If there's no one that has any concerns, I just wanted to mention once again, thanks to our administration and staff and CIO and Mr. Phil Dirks for getting us prepared for that and going through all the work to get the statement done. Thank you very much. So we'll call for a vote then. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And the motion's carried. Thank you. So we can move on to 8.2, bylaw 03-2020.
Excuse me, isn't there a second motion or a second motion to that? That it's the audited financial information return?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Is there two motions required, Patty?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that,
Oh.
Councillor Pat. So we're looking for,
I'll put that forward. The town council accept the audited financial information return for the town of Bruderheim for the year ending December 31, 2019.
thank you, Councillor Pat. Any comments, questions, or concerns from council with that motion? Okay, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? And the motion's carried. Thank you. Now we can move on to bylaw 03-2020.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Administration would like to provide council with information on a bylaw to establish the labor, equipment, and vehicle rental rates for the town of Bruderheim. The town council gives second reading to bylaw 03-2020, a bylaw that purpose of establishing the labor, equipment, and vehicle rates for the town of Bruderheim. The town council give third reading to bylaw 03/2020, a bylaw for the purpose of establishing the labor, equipment, and vehicle rates for the town of Bruderheim. Council history within the fees and charges bylaw reviewed annually by town council. Section 2, there's a reference to equipment and rental with operator. The fee is listed as per Alberta Road Builders Association listed price. This bylaw would provide clarity on when we would implement these charges. On April 15, 2020, council gave first reading to bylaw 03/2020, a bylaw for the purpose of establishing the labor, equipment, and vehicle rates for the town of Bruderheim. Strategic plan priority areas. A community is educated on the responsibilities and limitations of council and administration. Other impacts, Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, Chapter M26, Section 8. The bylaw will assist administration with processing requests for the use of equipment, vehicles, and our staff in the event of emergencies in other communities. And they request our assistance for assessing costs within chargebacks related to the enforcement for the town of Bruderheim unsightly bylaw if needed.
Okay, thank you for that. So we're looking for a motion for the second reading of that bylaw.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor George.
I make a motion that the town council give second reading to bylaw 03/2020, a bylaw for the purpose of establishing the labor, equipment, and vehicle rates for the town of Bruderheim as presented.
Thank you, Councillor George. Any comments, questions, or concerns from council with that motion?
Just on the header there, you have the council regular meeting, April 15th, 2020. Okay, just a correction.
Thank you, Councillor Pat. Administration is okay with that correction? I presume. Any other comments, questions, or concerns with that motion? Just wanted to highlight for those that may not know that are listening. Pat, could you just give some background as to why we're establishing this bylaw?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yes, so if there comes an opportunity where we use our equipment in another municipality, or if we were to help the fire department, which then would go through insurance, as well as emergency management situations, or for unsightly premises that were dangerous to community, we would go in with our equipment. That gives us the ability to charge back for labor and equipment.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other comments, questions, or concerns, call for a vote on the second reading. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? And the motion's carried. So we're looking for a reading for the third reading to bylaw 03/2020. Is someone willing to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Pat.
I move that town council give third reading to bylaw 03/2020, a bylaw for the purpose of establishing the labor, equipment, and vehicle rates for the town of Bruderheim.
Thank you very much. Any comments, questions, or concerns? We still have all of council with us online there.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Great. If there's no comments, questions, or concerns with the third reading, call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? And the motion's carried. Moving on to 8.3, bylaw 04/2020, CIO bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this bylaw is to provide council with changes recommended on the CAO bylaw. The town council gives second reading to bylaw 04/2020, the CAO bylaw, a bylaw to establish guidelines for the chief administrative officer in the town of Bruderheim. And that town council give third reading to bylaw 04/2020, the CAO bylaw, a bylaw to establish guidelines for the chief administrative officer in the town of Bruderheim. On July 6, 2016, town council approved bylaw 44/2016 and rescinded all previous CAO bylaws for the town of Bruderheim. In reviewing the CAO bylaw and the emergency management bylaw during the time of the COVID-19 crisis, administration realized that section 3.447 of the CAO bylaw didn't have a dollar amount included in the event of a local state of emergency. Communities are required to include a set expenditure approved by town council that the chief administrative officer can expend during a state of local emergency that are not in an approved budget. On April 15, 2020, council gave first reading to bylaw 04/2020, the CAO bylaw. Strategic plan areas, a community that is educated on responsibilities and limitation of council and administration. Other impacts, Emergency Management Act, Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, Chapter M26. Administration continues to monitor and review the emergency management bylaw and CEO bylaw as approved by council during the time of COVID-19 to ensure that town of Bruderheim has guidelines and processes in place to respond to the ongoing needs of our community.
Thank you so much. So we're looking for a motion for the second reading to bylaw 04-2020.
Sure.
I can make that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
I make a motion the town council give second reading to bylaw 04-2020, the CAO bylaw, a bylaw to establish guidelines for the chief administrator officer in the town of Bruderheim.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, or concerns with that motion from council?
I have one question.
Go ahead, Councillor George.
Just for clarity, what's the cap on the amount that administration officer can make?
Mr. Mayor, that would be 50,000.
Any other comments, questions, or concerns?
Mr. Mayor, that would be in 3.4.45.4.
Yeah, and so there's some structure behind that. It's not just a matter of Pat decides to spend $50,000 today kind of thing, right?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. We would have to be in a state of local emergency,
Right. Thank
which
you
would
so
be
much.
declared by the Emergency Management Agency, which is made out of council members.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Any other
Thank-
comments? Go ahead, Councillor George.
I just want to thank Banks for clarification of my question.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, or concerns on that motion? Okay, so we'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right.
Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion is carried. Looking for a motion, the third reading to the bylaw 04-2020.
I'll make that motion.
Councillor George.
I make a motion that town council gives third reading to bylaw 03-2020, a bylaw for the purpose of establishing, I make a motion that town council gives third reading to bylaw 04-2020, that CAO bylaw, a bylaw to establish guidelines for the chief administration officer in the town of Bruderheim.
Thank you, Councillor George. Any comments, questions, or concerns with that motion?
Yeah, I do, Mr. Mayor. I believe with that big of number, I think council should have a total say in that expenditure.
It sounds like someone's still got their mic open while Councillor Len is talking. Can we make sure we mute all the mics? We get a lot of feedback. So Councillor Len, could you repeat that?
Well, my concern is that $50,000 is a lot of money. And I believe all of council should be involved in that discussion prior to spending that kind of money.
You realize, Councillor Len, that that's when there's only during the state of a local emergency declared?
Yes, I do.
That would be declared by council.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, that also comes back to, if we're in the state of an emergency, you can't get sometimes you can't get everybody into a meeting or into a Zoom meeting. This is a good example. If nobody could leave their homes, how many could come in on a conversation and make a decision that quickly? So that's why in the emergency management bylaw, we've identified specific ones that have to be able to get in on the meeting in order to make that decision. So although it would be nice if we could all make those decisions, I don't think it's beneficial for in a case of emergency for that kind of stuff.
Thank you for that, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Len, or who is trying to speak there?
My comment is this, I don't think anybody's going to go on a runaway with this $50,000. I think cooler heads will prevail in the spending amounts.
Thank you. If we didn't have this kind of tool in place for the CAO. What would happen if we were in a state of local emergency and you needed to make something happen quickly? CAO, Pat, can you describe what would happen?
Wouldn't happen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So top of mind in the middle of the night, say for example, that our ponds over flooded in West Woodlands with the spring flood, we would have to mobilize pumps, lights, generators, could be evacuating people, getting buses in the middle of the night. There's not a lot of time for making decisions on gathering 7 people to make a decision. We would assemble the 3 people that are on the emergency advisory, and we would get them to authorize those conditions. So a lot of times, as you know, emergencies don't happen 8/5 Monday to Friday. There would be no instance where I would ever spend money that wasn't needed. And this just gives the Emergency Advisory Council and the CAO the authority to represent council and make those decisions in an emergency.
Thank you for clarifying that, CAO, Pat. Is there any other comments, questions, or concerns with the third reading of that bylaw?
Question.
Councilor George?
Bring it to vote.
Pardon me?
Bring it to vote.
Oh, okay. So call for vote then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Anyone opposed? And the motion's carried. Thank you very much. 8.4, borrowing bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Purpose of this report is to provide council with information regarding a line of credit bylaw. The town council give for first reading to bylaw 07/2020 to bylaw to incur indebtedness by the issuance of a line of credit. Due to the COVID-19 administration expects that several residents may not be able in a financial position to pay their property taxes on June 30th. Therefore, administration is requesting a line of credit with ATB Financial. This line of credit will allow the town to continue operations prior to receiving property taxes. Interest will only be charged on the amount used and not the full amount borrowed. A community that is educated on responsibilities and limitation of council and administration is one of our strategic plan areas. That's it.
Okay, thank you for that. So we're looking for a motion for the borrowing bylaw 07-2020.
Mr. Mayor, the town council give first reading to bylaw 07/2020, a bylaw to incur indebtedness by the issuance of a line of credit.
Thank you so much. Any comments, questions, or concerns with that motion?
I do, Mr. Mayor. So my only question is to you, Patty. Did you find out if it also goes against our total amount debt ratio, even though we don't use the money?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through Deputy Mayor Schuler. Yes, we did find out. Sorry, I should have added that. So it wouldn't add to our debt load unless we used it. So if we borrowed $100, that would be added to our debt load that we're allowed. So even though we had a $300,000 line of credit, if we had a zero balance on that line of credit, that would not affect our debt load.
Thank you for
Nice.
that. Any other comments, questions, or concerns with the motion?
Question. How would this, when would this be paid back at the end of the month, or like by the time that 3-month period is over? Or how does this get paid back? It's not like a regular debenture. So how does that work?
Mr. Mayor, through Councillor Schuler. So a line of credit is very similar to the ones we have in our houses. So if we borrowed $50 because we were short paying our bills for the town of Bruderheim for July, if we were to capture some tax dollars in August that weren't paid in July, we could put that down on a line of credit, and that would reduce our interest charges as well as our outstanding debt. So the advantage of the line of credit is we only guessing that we might have a cash flow program, and this way we only have to use what we need, and we can pay down any debt whenever cash flow becomes available. Does that make sense?
It will be paid back as soon as possible, as soon as the funds are there, or paid back is what you're saying.
Absolutely. I think we talked about if 30% don't pay, 50% don't pay, our cash flow would definitely be a problem. So the full intention of administration is not to use the line of credit. The line of credit will be forever. So that's not a bad thing either. If we get into a situation like a water line break and we have investments that don't come due for 90 days, we have another pandemic situation where people are unable to pay bills. We still have to pay our utility bills. We still have to make our payments through the education requisition, seniors requisition. This would give us a little bit more breathing room to do that.
I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Patty, what is the percentage on this line of credit? It fluctuates? How does it work?
Sharon, do you know that?
I believe that she told me it was 2%, but I can double check on that.
Okay, thanks, Sharon.
Yeah, it's usually the local bank rate plus prime,
Plus
right?
prime.
So 1.5 plus prime. So it's usually the lowest rate out there, which is a phenomenal rate, I know.
Thank you for those questions. Is there any other questions, comments, or concerns with the motion?
And Mr. Mayor, if I could add, if people have other questions, we can get those answered before the second and third reading in 2 weeks.
Okay,
Feel free to send those to me.
sure. So if there's no other comments, questions, or concerns, we'll call for a vote then. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? None opposed, and the motion's carried. 8.5, tax rate bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Administration would like to provide council with information on the 2020 tax rate bylaw. The town council approved first reading of bylaw 05/2020, being a bylaw to authorize the 2020 tax rates for the town of Bruderheim to meet budget and requisition requirements. Pursuant to the approval of the town's 2020 municipal operating budgets, municipal property taxes of $1,427,106 are required. Alberta Municipal Affairs has submitted the 2020 school requisition, which is attached enclosure. Lamont County Housing Foundation has submitted the 2020 municipal seniors housing requisition in the amount of $57,000, $431. Town council is required to authorize bylaw tax rates county that are sufficient to generate property tax revenues required to support municipal programs and services pursuant to approved budgets. Provincial Education and Lamont County Housing Foundation requisitions. The 2020 tax rates being recommended are contained within bylaw 05/2020. Minimum tax was incorporated in 2018 with a minimum of $500 and a minimum of $50 for annex land. The 2020 education rates generate sufficient funds to pay the Alberta School Foundation requisition in the amount of $406,227.39 to be collected pursuant to the approval of bylaw 05/2020. The 2020 Lamont County Housing Foundation tax rate generates sufficient funds in the amount of $57,431 to pay the Lamont County Housing Foundation requisition. A brochure outlining what taxpayers receive for their taxes will be included with the combined assessment tax notes that are due to be mailed to town ratepayers by the end of May. Taxes will be due by June 30th, 2020, with the first 18% penalty being applied October 1st, 2020. A booklet from Municipal Affairs is available at the office that outlines the process of assessment appeals.
Thank you for that, CEO Pat. We're looking for a motion for the first reading to bylaw 05/2020.
I'll put that motion forward.
Thank you, Councillor Pat.
I move the town council approve first reading to bylaw 05/2020, being a bylaw to authorize the 2020 tax rates for the town of Bruderheim to meet budget and requisition requirements.
Thank you. May I ask that when council is not speaking, they hit the mute button? Someone's moving a bunch of paperwork and it makes it hard to hear. Thank you. So is there any comments, questions, or concerns with that motion?
I like that you put in there the fact that October 1st comes into effect with the 18% rather than at the end of June. So that's good to see that.
So correct, Mr. Mayor. So typically July 1st is our 18% penalty, but because of COVID-19, administration is recommending that we follow the province's lead and allow residents the extra 3 months to pay.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, questions, or concerns from council?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. On all of this bylaw, I don't see a specific percentage in there for residents, like 1.3% or whatever. Should we not have a specific percentage in there, or we're just saying that because of all of X amount of bills, blah, 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 this is what we need to collect?
Sharon, do you want to address that? I'll see if I can unmute her.
Is Sharon available?
She's there, yeah, she's trying to mute. But Mr. Mayor, through Deputy Mayor Schuler, so the next meeting we'll be discussing the budget. And so this is just the tax rate. And if council approves the budget, then we will set the budget increase for 2020.
Thank you very
I'm
much.
here now. I'm
Thank you.
not sure I understood the question from Deputy Mayor.
It's okay, Sharon. Patty's answered it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, questions, or concerns from council?
And Mr. Mayor, we are thinking about hosting a town hall meeting to talk about assessment and tax during the COVID. And just to explain the difference between assessment, tax, mill rates, annex lands. And we thought we'd give that a go just to help with the education of our residents.
Right, and would that be like a virtual town hall, or how would that look?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Great
Any
idea.
other? Yeah, I think so. Any other comments, questions, or concerns from council? Haven't heard none. We'll call for a vote then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion's carried. Thank you. 8.6 utility bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Administration would like to provide council with an opportunity to update the utility bylaw for the town of Bruderheim. The town council approved the first reading of bylaw 08-2020, the utility bylaw. On June 15, 2019, town council passed third and final reading of bylaw 04-2019, the utility bylaw. Through enforcement and reference to this bylaw, it became evident that the administration needed to make some changes to the bylaws noted below. Addition of a statement to 2.81, the tenant or owner must be present. At 5.43, for all dwellings, water and sewer services will be billed together. Add a dot after the word bylaw, 6.11. Change the bylaw as being repealed to bylaw 04-2019. Strategic plan areas, a community that is educated on the responsibility and limitation of council and administration. Other impacts, legal and ledge, Municipal Government Act, RSA 200, M26, Section 7 bylaws. The revisions to this bylaw will address some of the concerns brought forward by staff and residents, as this bylaw was referenced for daily operations. The communication plan, once approved, bylaw 08-2020, the utility bylaw will be placed on the town of Bruderheim website once town council approves third and final reading.
Thank you for that, CAO Pat. Would someone be willing to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I make a motion that I'll make a motion that town council give first reading to bylaw 08-2020, the utility bylaw as presented.
Thank you for that, Councillor George. Any comments, questions, or concerns from council with that motion?
Yeah, I have a question. You're mentioning that you want the owner of the property and the person renting of the property there at the same time if you have to do anything. Is that going to be feasible? Like, I mean, as a person who owns rental property, I'm thinking if there's anything that's the problem, I as an owner am responsible. Renters may come and go, may not be able to be there because of work or who knows what, right?
Mr. Mayor, through Deputy Mayor, great question. That's why we've actually reworded it to the tenant or owner must be present. Previously, we didn't have that statement there.
Oh, I see. Or owner. Okay, sorry, I didn't catch that.
No,
Thank
that's
you.
okay. That's exactly why we changed it, because of what you said.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments, questions, or concerns from council with that motion? Okay, call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? And none opposed, the motion is carried. 8.7 fees and charges bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Administration would like to provide council with information on amending the 2020 fees and charges. The town council give first reading to bylaw 09-2020, a bylaw to amend the fees and charges bylaw. Council gave final reading to bylaw 13-2019 on December 18, 2019. And Mr. Mayor, we highlighted the changes. Would you like me to go over those?
Yeah, just quickly, please. That would be good.
So we found through our audit and best practices on page 1, the tax penalties, we should just write as per tax rate bylaw because we actually had it stated in 2 places. And then under miscellaneous, we also been finding that a lot of people are coming and asking for information that's taken an incredible amount of time for administration to research. So under miscellaneous, we've given the CEO or designate the ability to charge $25 an hour for research information. Page 2, Public Works, equipment rental, we put as per Alberta Road Builders Association, but we took out the labor part and we put in utility operator without a vehicle, and laborer without a vehicle. We've added those designations. Underwater, as you know, we're entering into a service agreement with the Bruderheim Water Co-op. So we thought it would be best practices to make sure we didn't have that rate listed in 2 different places.
Okay.
We did, if you remember, last year have a conversation last fall about the ball diamonds only charging, not charging per day, only charging $100 for a weekend tournament rate. And that is just for cleanup and getting ready and prep and probably cleanup after the event. And we put some clarification around the office rental for the incubator clients, number 12. And Mr. Mayor, I believe that was it for 2020.
Thank you. Good. We're looking for a motion from council for the first reading for this bylaw.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Dan.
The council, wow. The town council give first reading to bylaw 09/2020, a bylaw to amend the fees and charges bylaw 13/2019.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, or concerns from council with that motion?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Mayor. If the kids or a family wants to play I'll move back a bit, wants to play a scrub ball game, there's no fee to that.
Mr. Mayor, through Councillor Flutter, that's correct. It used to be $18 to use it. We've taken that out.
Okay, that's
Weekend booking for tournament.
okay, great.
Is there any mention on how the people would get access to be able to do that?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, what was that?
So that was a great question by Councillor Len about the fee for just going and having an afternoon of fun playing some fool around baseball. How would they go about getting access?
So, Mr. Mayor, we're currently working with the Ag Society. As you know, we are doing the trails in the community park and we have to address fencing. And then that way we'll be putting in a walk-through gate to the ball diamonds.
Okay, thank you very much. And the other question that I would ask is the Bruderheim Water Co-op, that's looking promising then?
So, Mr. Mayor, we are currently helping them with their immediate emergent water line situation. And then we have been working with a contract back and forth. And again, as you know, it'll be an interim short-term contract to make sure it's viable for the community. And if I can just add to the ball diamonds, of course, as you know, right now they are closed because of COVID-19.
Correct. Any other comments, questions, or concerns?
Yeah, just in regards to the ball diamonds, are they able to drive up to the ball diamonds at all? Like if they've got equipment and stuff, they got to carry it down? Is that?
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Lecco, yes, they'll have to carry it through as the ag grounds. As you know, if you start letting vehicles in there, you could have a lot of destruction, the assets. It's common practice for most municipalities that you walk in. Again, if there was, you know, a little mini evening tournament or something that we knew CBMSA was going to host a little evening event, then we'd definitely open it up. But for just people to walk in and play, a scrub game, they'll have to walk in. But if an organization wanted to approach the town, we'll communicate that we would definitely open the gates.
Yeah, that was more of what I was asking. Sorry, if there was a group or a booking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Wayne. Any other comments, questions, or concerns from council with that motion? Okay, haven't heard none. Call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion's carried. Next is 8.8, Borderlands Emergency Management Mutual Aid Agreement.
Mr. Mayor, a number of our regional partners are developing these mutual aid agreements. We're working on one in the CREP region as well. So we want to provide council with an opportunity to participate in the Borderlands Emergency Management Mutual Aid Agreement. The town council approved the Borderlands Emergency Management Mutual Aid Agreement. Council approved the Capital Region Emergency Preparedness Partnership Agreement on February 17, 2010. This agreement provides the town of Bruderheim with an opportunity to call on the communities that are members of this agreement in times of emergencies for additional support. The town of Bruderheim continues to be a member in this partnership. The Borderlands Emergency Management Mutual Aid Agreement is a new mutual aid partnership for communities in the northeast portion of the province, which includes communities within Lamont County. The Alberta Emergency Management Agency has a representative working with these communities to get this mutual agreement in place. Strategic plan areas, a community that is educated on responsibilities and limitation of council and administration. Other impacts, Emergency Management Act, Section 11C, and Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, CD 13, S11, 2007, C12, S9, 2010, C5, S4, 2018, C14, S7, and 2020, C2, S2. Mutual aid agreements are necessary to ensure that resources are in place in times of emergencies. They set the framework for collaborative approach and how resources will be determined and invoiced.
Thank you very much. So we're looking for a motion from council to approve or to discuss the Borderlands Emergency Management Mutual Aid Agreement.
I can make that motion, Mayor Carl.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
The town council approved the Borderlands Emergency Management Mutual Aid Agreement.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, or concerns from council with that motion?
So we would stay with the Capital Region Emergency Preparedness Partnership Agreement. We're still part of that. And then we would be able to call on the Borderlands Emergency Management Mutual Aid Agreement with those partners as well, or?
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Lee. That's right. Bruderheim is great advantageous of being on the border of many different regions. So we were invited to join this one as well, which I'm very excited that we have another option.
Okay.
So one thing that I wanted to say that in an emergency sometime, especially if it's a natural disaster, we might find that the capital region is affected, say Black Friday, that kind of covered a significant amount of area, and the normal partners that would come to our assistance might be involved in the same emergency. So reaching out to Lloydminster or Vermilion for aid is a very viable, sound solution to emergency management.
Alrighty, just I guess just kind of a little note there for the last page. You have Bruderheim, but I'm not sure if you missed putting town or village or city there. It's that area where it lists all the.
Oh yeah, we did know that. We told them that. Yeah.
Okay, they weren't expecting
just
a big
Bruderheim.
metropolis. Just like Madonna.
Is there any other comments, questions, or concerns from council with motion? Theo, Pat, just for the sake of those that may be listening in, is there a very lengthy list of municipalities that would be involved, or is it worth mentioning?
Mr. Mayor, I don't know how many off the top of my head. It's quite an extensive list.
Is it all of Northeast Alberta, basically? Like,
Yeah, I would say upward towards 30, 40.
Okay, great.
It's a fine list, isn't it?
It's a very large list, all the way from the Lloydminster border up to Wood Buffalo.
Yeah.
That's we're the western border.
That's good to have good neighbors.
Maybe that's why they have Bruderheim, Councillor Lee, because we're the end.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions, or concerns on that motion? Okay, haven't heard none. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? And the motion's carried. Last one on the 8th is 8.9, and that's in regards to the time of the council meetings. Councillor George, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, if I had requested to have the time changed from 7 o'clock to 6 o'clock, but if council feels that they want to change it back, I am in favor of that.
Okay, so do you want to make a motion, Councillor George?
I'll make a motion that we change the regular council time from $1,800 to $1,900.
Now, we'll be starting with the next council meeting, correct?
That's right.
Okay. That motion is okay. CAO Pat, we got the format right?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just do a friendly amendment that we just say we revert back to approved council meeting times as we at
Great.
7 p.m. Yeah.
Are you open to that friendly amendment, Councillor George?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Any comments, questions, or concerns from council with that motion?
Mr. Mayor, I like the 6 o'clock, especially when we have the long summer days and it's only goes to middle of July, so it's only 4 meetings.
Yes,
I like the 6 o'clock.
I agree with Len. We only went for 4 meetings. So stay at the 6.
Others from
I'd like to friendly or kindly disagree. I'm getting home from work late and I'm rushing to get to 6 o'clock, as you can see.
Oh, I thought that's how you always dress.
For work, yeah, absolutely.
Where's the suit and tie?
Right.
Others from council?
Yeah, myself too. Getting home from work and getting changed and cleaned up and ready for a meeting is challenging sometimes.
My comment is why I brought it back is that I requested it, I didn't need it, and people changed their lifestyle for me, so I thought I would give it back to them.
Okay, thank you. I believe the only one we haven't heard from is Councillor Wayne. Did you want to weigh in on this?
I did. I said I'm good either way. It's nice to be done early, but it's nice to have the day until 7 o'clock, so it's not a rush for most people. But at this time, I don't have a huge rush to get to the meetings.
Okay. So is there any other comments, questions, or concerns before we call for a vote? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 And opposed? And the motion's carried. Thank you. 9.1 council committee reports. Looking for a motion to receive council committee reports.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Dan.
That council received the council committee reports as information.
Comments, questions, or concerns from council with that motion?
I guess I only have one question. How are some of you guys doing your meetings? I hear Pat's got things happening. None of the groups that I'm on or have done any Zoom meetings or anything.
Oh, well, we've had two. We got a third one coming up in May the 27th. It's not always Zoom. It's sometimes telephone thing, whatever that is.
Whatever works, right? Whatever works.
It works.
Good for you.
It works.
For you.
Yeah. FCSS, we had a big meeting, our AGM meeting. It was over Zoom.
Okay.
We haven't done anything. They pushed all ours back until for notice.
I've only had the one meeting. It was the landfill commission meeting. We had it at the Chipman Hall, and there's lots of room there. They spread out the tables, and everybody respected the social distancing. That's the only meeting other than some listening to the province information reports online. Any other comments, questions, or concerns with the motion on the council committee reports? Okay, haven't heard none. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? And none opposed, and the motion's carried. 9.2 mayor report. Need a motion to receive as information.
I'll put that
motion.
forward.
Thank you, Councillor Pat. I think.
I move that council receive the mayor report as information.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, or concerns with that motion? Okay, call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion's carried. 9.3 CAO report. Need a motion to receive that report.
The council received this Chief Administrative Officer report as information.
Thank you, Councillor Wayne. Any comments, questions, or concerns with that motion?
I just
I have
want to, oh, go ahead, George.
just one question. It's in regards to stormwater getting into our sanitary sewer system. Have we had much problem with that this year?
Mr. Mayor, through Councillor Campbell, no, we haven't had any issues this year.
I have had some comments from residents that they liked the fact that it was Public Works doing the street sweeping, or whoever I'm assuming it was them, instead of hiring it out this year. So they're pretty impressed to see them out there doing it. So kudos to them. Thank you.
And also, just to pass that on with the, our communications and Jill, she's doing a really good job on keeping everybody posted on what's going on. And I've been letting people know, you know what, if you want to see what's going, just go to that site and you'll find out what's happening, right?
Yeah, and I'd like to commend administration for working with our businesses to help them through these COVID times and making sure that they are following the guidelines of the province. I've been in some other towns and there's been some fairly poor layout of what we see happening in our towns. I'm fairly pleased that our administration has helped our businesses if they needed it and follow the rules, but still working, making money and growing. So that's good.
Any other comments, questions, or concerns from council with the motion for the CAO report?
In regards to the campground, are we seeing an increase of occupancy?
Mr. Mayor, through Council Campbell, we have currently 3 reservations. That's it right now.
Patty, is it possible to just give a kind of a rundown, I guess, on the TIPS program for tax payments?
Yeah, absolutely. So the TIPS program is the tax payment plan that you are able to pay every month. So your yearly bill is divided between 12 months. And for 2020, we'll be communicating that because of the COVID-19, we're allowing people to get it in on the program at any time during the year. So if you feel that you can't afford to pay your taxes on July 1st, you'll be able to make arrangements with myself to either pay your remainder over 6 months or to catch up on the past 6 months and divide your balance the last 6 months. Is that clear enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there going to be any kind of paperwork sent out to follow up with that?
Yeah, that'll.
I can hand it out to everybody. I can go door to door.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, through Councillor Lecco, we're working on a communication plan to distribute that information to all of the owners of property in Bruderheim.
Awesome, thank you.
Just for information, what was a dollar saving by having Public Works do our street cleaning?
Mr. Mayor, through Councillor Campbell, $8,000.
But
Mr. Mayor, if I could just qualify that, I haven't got the bills because, of course, we went through 2 brooms doing that.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe there
I'll
might
have to
be
follow up with that. That's not counting expenses. Yeah, I'll get that to council.
Thank you.
If I may, a quick question, Patty. Your COVID-19 food pantry, how are you making out with that?
Mr. Mayor, through Deputy Mayor, we have actually had generous supplies and donations to the program as well as the Bruderheim Bucks. And so, yeah, we're very happy with the way the program's running and people are able to help themselves to what they need. And a great news story is somebody that took advantage of the food pantry, stopped me in the parking lot the other day and offered some money back to the program because they're back working. So I think it really is a testament to it's a short interim solution. We're not replacing the food bank. We're just helping people that normally wouldn't have issues around food security. It's just because the situation has lowered their income because of COVID-19.
Great job, thanks.
Any other comments, questions, or concerns from council? I just wanted to make a couple comments. First of all, I wanted to say a big thank you to CIO and the administration and staff for supporting the folks that were displaced from their homes. Heard great feedback from the one family that they felt the love from our town to help those folks out. So thank you for doing that. Great job. On your planning and legislative services, you have development permits for residential properties. Has there been an uptick in the number of people doing work at home because they're home from work? Or?
Mr. Mayor, yes, there has.
I'm sure you've seen on the news that the home hardwares and the Home Depots of the world are experiencing a lot of business. So it's exciting news actually, because people are cleaning up their properties, and we are going to plan a big item pickup this summer as soon as the government allows us to do that.
Okay, thank you. And the last thing I wanted to mention is it worth giving a shout out about the Mother's Day project that the town is doing in partnership with the Ag Society?
Absolutely. I'll turn the mic over to the Director of Legal and Legislative Services, Sherry.
I'd like to thank the town of Bruderheim for partnering with the Bruderheim Ag Society, and we have about 25 families registered with us right now. And so we're really looking forward to putting out the pots and the plants for the students to do a Mother's Day project. So thank you to the town of Bruderheim for the support.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other comments, questions, or concerns on the CAO report? A call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed, and motion's carried. Correspondence and information items. I don't believe that in my package there was anything for information to pass on. So correspondence. I see it's bolded for closed session. Do we have a closed session today?
No, Mr. Mayor.
So we'd be looking for a motion to adjourn then.
Make a motion to close up and adjourn.
Thank you for that motion. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 And none opposed, and the motion's carried. Great job, everybody. Thank you.